Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Today channel. Brooke is devastated as Ridge declares his love for Taylor once more. Ridge Forrester resists Eric's attempts to pair them up on The Bold and the Beautiful by reaffirming his love to Taylor following Brooke's unexpected runway debut in her famous Portofino gown. A devastating blow to Brooke's runway romance hopes is delivered by Ridge. True love is unaffected by the fashion showstopper. Ridge Forrester is going to reveal something shocking that will leave the blonde beauty completely devastated, just when we thought Brooke Logan's runway moment would change the course of history. It appeared that Ridge's dreamy eyes would portend a return to their epic romance following that stunning fashion presentation in which Brooke walked the catwalk in her famous Portofino gown, thanks to Eric Forrester's not-so-subtle matchmaking. No. Thus. Quick. Taylor is Ridge's one and only choice. Ridge is going to make it very evident where his heart really belongs, despite those lustful glances that had social media buzzing. He will be telling Brooke and everybody else who will listen in future episodes that he is totally devoted to Taylor Hayes and that neither a designer dress nor a runway reunion would make him change his mind. I mean, is it really Taylor's fault that she's upset? To stop Brooke from appearing in a fashion show, the woman really locked her in a vault. Which, let's face it, pales in comparison to some of the antics with which these two have fought for Ridge's affections over the years. Strongly supporting her mother, Steffy Forrester cautions Taylor against allowing Brooke to prevail and exhorts her to stand up for the family they have always desired. Like a mother, like a daughter, neither is giving up on defending their property. The backfire of Eric's matchmaking is spectacular. Eric, poor guy. It's about to blow up in his face when he tries to play Cupid for his son and Brooke. Ridge will accept the fashion show's PR triumph, but he will firmly resist his father's interference. However, what about that instance on the runway when Ridge was unable to look away from Brooke? I hear you inquire. Evidently, though, it was insufficient to get past whatever he discovered with Taylor. Even in the world of soap operas, sometimes a look is simply a look. Heartbroken Brooke, what comes next? What does Brooke do now that Ridge has made his stance painfully obvious? According to sources, she might find solace in Nick Marone's arms. Is this the start of another complex chapter in the story of Logan, Forrester, and Marone? The entire Forrester family will undoubtedly be shaken by the consequences of Ridge's choice. Is Eric going to accept his son's decision? Can Brooke take being turned down again? Most importantly, can Taylor and the guy she has loved for decades finally have a happy ending? In a livestream interview, Brooke makes hints about the Ridge wedding. Before Eric Forrester finally confessed, Brooke Logan alluded to a Ridge Forrester wedding in a livestream interview, according to The Bold and the Beautiful recap for Monday, April 28. After the fashion presentation, Taylor Hayes updated Steffy Forrester on her and Brooke's unintentional lockdown in the vault. Taylor figured the spectacular was the reason Brooke was so anxious to leave. Steffy was upset that Brooke took center stage and questioned how she managed to do that. Brooke returned to Ridge after changing out of the eye-catching attire, and he praised her for rescuing the day. Steffy and Taylor watched on a monitor during Monday's B&B episode while Ridge and Brooke had a live-stream interview together. In response to the question of whether Brooke would wear this gown with Portofino influences at a much larger event, clearly a wedding, Brooke replied, "With Ridge, you never know." Carter Walton, Lawrence St. Victor, commended Daphne Rose in a backstage area because of the buzz her scents were making. As Katie Logan gaped at them from a distance, Daphne ended up kissing Carter to celebrate. Steffy attempted to redirect focus from Brooke's spectacular moment to Forrester's victorious couture return with her own streaming interview. Katie pretended that her sister had stepped in to save her when Steffy and Taylor discussed Brooke's cunning showstopper maneuver with her. After saying farewell to Christine Blair in the CEO's office, Eric and Donna Logan spoke with Ridge, Brooke, and Zend Forrester Dominguez. Zend, Brooke, and Ridge shared the news that Forrester was trending on social media. Following the appearance of Steffy and Taylor, the subject of Brooke robbing her of her major runway moment was raised. Eric said that he was responsible for it since he wanted to create a big impression at this fashion show and was motivated to redesign the classic Portofino dress. Ridge questioned whether the showstopper delay was caused by Brooke's suggestion that Eric approached her with the proposal at the last minute. Ridge was informed by Taylor about the unintentional vault lock-in that almost spoiled Eric's surprise. Eric claimed that they had altered the story and that the takeover was no longer being discussed. Steffy voiced her displeasure since she believed Brooke's involvement was unnecessary to ensure that occurred. However, Eric maintained that it was the correct decision and emphasized Brooke's past relationship with Ridge. From Eric's perspective, Brooke salvaged the day and saved their bacon. When Brooke and Eric were alone, he gushed about experiencing the magic with Ridge earlier and asserted that he recalled what they had discussed. Eric persisted in his optimistic forecasts regarding Brooke and Ridge's eventual union. Taylor spoke with Ridge how the showstopper received a lot of attention since the woman he was wearing it was the one that everyone wanted to see him with. Ridge countered that it was only a dress, pointing out that he had previously dated Taylor. Ridge recalled being on the runway with Brooke after he had tried his best to reassure Taylor about their relationship. Brooke also remembered being with Ridge in front of the crowd in another place, and she whispered to herself about the momentous occasion. According to teasers for The Bold and the Beautiful, Brooke will have a harsh awakening after Ridge rejects her once more. Don't miss it. Los Angeles's fashion industry may appear gorgeous, but underneath the glamour and runway lights is a raging tempest of heartache, betrayal, and rage. When Taylor Hayes and her daughter Steffy Forrester learned the truth about the coveted showstopper moment at the most recent Forrester Creations fashion show, that storm erupted, and they felt completely caught off guard and deceived by the people they trusted the most. Rumors about a last-minute alteration to the final look, the dramatic conclusion that the entire fashion company had been preparing for, started to circulate backstage. With strong ties to Forrester Creations and significant personal stakes, Taylor and Steffy had put in many hours behind the scenes to make sure the program was a success. Steffy saw this show as a power move to demonstrate that she was still the legitimate driving force behind Forrester, not merely a commercial opportunity. Regaining dignity after years of being pushed out of the spotlight, both personally and professionally, was a subliminal statement for Taylor. However, it wasn't Steffy's selected model or design that stood out as the lights went down and the runway came into focus. Instead, it was Brooke Logan, wearing a couture item that was obviously meant for someone else, and beaming from ear to ear. Although the showstopper belonged to Steffy, Brooke managed to make it her big moment. Suddenly the mood of the night changed from one of triumph to one of tension. Taylor's face went white backstage when she saw that the patriarch she had previously looked up to, Eric Forrester, had purposefully changed Steffy's highlight to a Brooke-focused ending. What should have been Steffy's greatest moment now appeared to be a Brooke victory lap, skillfully planned to steal the show, and the story. Taylor's heart ached not only for her daughter but also for the bitter knowledge that Eric had once again taken Brooke's side, continuing a decades-old pattern of Logan favoritism that had hurt her. Steffy, meantime, was nearly pulsing with anger. It was heartbreaking to watch Brooke stride triumphantly down the runway in what was meant to be her moment of fame. A publicity gimmick meant to revive Brooke's waning fashion relevance eclipsed Steffy's vision, her team's efforts, and the message of female empowerment she had hoped to communicate. When Steffy discovered how many people had participated, the treachery became even more painful. Despite his claims of impartiality, Ridge had watched in silence as his ex-wife took control of the conclusion. Eric had exchanged her moment for a Logan legacy play, and Steffy thought that Eric had finally begun to regard her as more than merely a successor. Backstage, the aftermath was intense. Taylor's voice was harsh with shock as she approached Eric in front of stunned colleagues and models. "How could you harm Steffy in this way?" she insisted. "She merited this. This is what she labored for." Eric struggled to defend his actions, saying that the decision was made for the brand, for attention, and for what would sell. "And you gave it away." However, Steffy and Taylor didn't buy it. The fact that Brooke had stolen the show and that it was done in the name of strategy and family harmony was what most enraged them. The same family that had always demonstrated to Taylor and Steffy that the Logans were always more important than them. For her part, Brooke pretended to be shocked, at least at first. However, Steffi's fire was only stoked by the self-satisfied delight that lay behind her carefully crafted astonishment. "Don't act as though you were unaware," Steffy yelled. When Ridge attempted to step in and suggested that everyone cool down and consider the wider issue, tensions reached a breaking point. "You've been doing this your whole life, stealing moments, hijacking families, and pretending you're innocent when the dust settles." However, the greater picture was already quite evident to Taylor and Steffy. Brooke's power persisted, even at the expense of justice and integrity. Taylor turned to face Ridge, her voice breaking. "Even though you claim to love your family, Brooke always wins out in the end. How does that describe us?" "Concerning me? What about Steffy?" Ridge remained silent, and that said it all. The consequences persisted at home. Steffy spoke up to Finn about her disappointment and heartache. Ever encouraging, Finn pledged to support her while she made the decision to face the board, leave Forrester completely, or plan her next power move. Even though she was furious, Steffy wasn't prepared to give up. The treachery had, if anything, stoked her inner fury. She would make sure Brooke and Eric regretted ever underestimating her, in addition to reclaiming what was rightfully hers. In the meantime, Taylor tried to comprehend the extent of the betrayal by getting back in touch with Thomas. She even briefly wondered if going back to Los Angeles was a mistake. However, Thomas reminded her that being strong meant overcoming pain rather than avoiding it. Additionally, Taylor couldn't make changes from the sidelines if she wanted to. The combat lines were established before the end of the week. More unified than ever, Taylor and Steffy were ready to counterattack. It was unclear if they would expose Eric's partiality, take their fashion skills elsewhere, or start their own competing company. There was no doubt about it, they weren't dying softly. Old rivalries were revealed, old scars were resurrected, and the showstopper drama served as a reminder to all viewers that this family drama is anything than surface level. Taylor and Steffy were ready to write their new chapter, their hearts bruised but their ambitions stoked, and this time, nobody would be taking away their fame. Fashion has always been more than just fabric and design in the glitzy, high-stakes world of Forrester Creations. Its power, love, treachery, and legacy woven into every thread. While there were many breathtaking moments at the most recent runway event, none were as seismic as the shock that shook the audience when Brooke Logan and Ridge Forrester walked the catwalk together, arm in arm, a vision of rekindled passion and timeless charm. This event was sure to be one of the most iconic in Forrester history. Cameras flashed, mouths dropped, and the audience erupted in resounding ovation because the event was so stunning. However, not everyone was applauding behind the scenes. For Steffy Forrester, the encounter was frustrating rather than magical. To Steffy, Brooke and Ridge's unexpected swagger was a hijacking of the very event she had worked so hard to plan, even though it appeared to the outside world to be a celebration of enduring love. And why was it even more intolerable? The much-anticipated showstopper gown that Brooke wore was meant to be the centerpiece of Steffy's show concept. It was meant to be a portion of her legacy. Instead, it was stolen from her, rebranded in real time as a tribute to Bridge's alleged runway magic, and, to make matters worse, her grandfather Eric gloatingly claimed credit for the success of the finale, even though he had completely kept her in the dark about the scheme. Steffy felt like everything around her was on fire because of the betrayal, both personally and professionally. Steffy realized something was wrong the instant Brooke stepped into the spotlight wearing the eye-catching dress, a glittering fusion of daring innovation and timeless grace. In order to represent the future generation of Forrester leadership, she had carefully chosen a different finale appearance. She had carefully selected the model, practiced the last walk to the highest standard, and discussed every aspect with her team. It was as though Steffy's whole story had been erased when Brooke appeared, backed by Ridge in a fitted black suit that shouted old-school Forrester. Her father Ridge appeared complicit, and the spectacular had turned into a Logan statement piece. Steffy felt sick to her stomach as she watched the crowd erupt. Ridge, the man who always seemed to float wherever the Logan winds blew, and Brooke, the perpetual muse, had once again stolen what should have been her victory lap. Eric took the stage after the event, thanking the audience and subtly framing the grand finale as his idea, a celebration of timeless love and iconic Forrester artistry. While praising Ridge for joining her in what he called a spontaneous moment of passion and purpose, Steffy became even more irate. Steffy didn't believe it. This was a planned move to regain control of Forrester's story and put Brooke back in the spotlight Steffy had been vying for years, not an impromptu romantic gesture. Steffi's rage bubbled over backstage. First, she went over to Eric and demanded to know why her final look had been changed without telling her. Calm but unrepentant, Eric maintained that the choice was taken with the brand's best interests in mind. "Steffy, your ideas are fantastic," he remarked. "However, there are situations when the crowd need familiarity. They adore Brooke. They adore Ridge. This is what sells." However, Steffy saw respect as more important than sales. It was the ultimate insult to see this collection, which she had put her heart into, transformed into a Brooke and Ridge love fest. She looked to Ridge, but he didn't provide any solace. His standard defense of not wanting to hurt anyone was delivered, but the damage was already done. When Steffy asked him directly if he knew Brooke would be wearing the showstopper, his hesitancy was apparent. He emphasized, "It just happened." "It did," Steffy yelled, but Eric thought it would make a statement. "It told everyone that Brooke will always be your leading lady, and your father's favorite, regardless of how hard I work or what I bring to this company." Taylor, who had come to support her daughter but ended up witnessing the betrayal from the audience, joined the altercation. She was clearly disappointed in Ridge and Eric. She whispered, "You claimed that this was about the brand, but what message did you actually convey? This place is still run by Brooke. That nothing has changed." In the meantime, Brooke reveled in the evening's radiance, conveniently ignoring or apparently not realizing the trail of frustration she had left behind. She expressed her gratitude to the journalists and designers and even gave Steffy a tactful compliment, stating, "Your vision laid the groundwork." Steffy wasn't in the mood for platitudes, but I had the privilege of closing it out. She interpreted Brooke's stroll as yet another instance of the Logans' propensity to intrude into situations they didn't deserve. For Steffy, the hardest aspect was that their headline was now in the press. Steffy Forrester redefines modern elegance. Not Brooke and Ridge, fashion's power couple reunite on the runway. The story had been altered in real time, and she was furious about it. The fallout persisted in the days that followed. There were whispered discussions inside about whether Steffy would leave. There were rumors that she was thinking about starting her own brand under a different name than Forrester or maybe joining forces with Spectra to make something entirely original. Eric, on the other hand, was unaware of the extent of the harm, emphasizing in interviews how the Brooke Ridge finale symbolized everything Forrester stands for. Ridge, torn between his daughter and Brooke's loyalty, attempted to patch things up, but Steffy wasn't amenable. "Phone calls and flowers won't solve this," she informed him. Even Hope, who had a troubled past with Brooke and Ridge, quietly supported Steffy, saying, "You showed me exactly where I stand." She remarked, "It ought to have been your moment. This collection was created by you. You deserved it." That uncommon display of unity made Steffy reflect on the bigger picture as well as the show. Despite its reputation, Forrester Creations remained a battleground of emotional obligations and past allegiances. She might need to completely leave the heritage if she sought actual authority and respect. The event also revealed a more profound reality. Although Brooke and Ridge's runway magic may have wowed the public, there was a price to pay. And the price was trust, faith from a team that had adhered to Steffy's vision, only to see it stolen for nostalgic reasons, and trust from a daughter who had spent years attempting to demonstrate her leadership abilities. Steffy was now aware that she would need to battle for her future and possibly leave the previous names behind if she desired one on her own terms. The actual drama was just getting started, even though the fashion show was over. Steffy had to decide whether to follow the Logan Forrester fantasy or completely alter the scenario as the attention and applause subsided. She was adamant that no one else's runway performance would ever define her legacy. At least for Brooke Logan and Eric Forrester, two of the most audacious figures in Los Angeles, the glittering runway finale concluded with celebration rather than scandal after all the stress, plotting, and ego clashing at Forrester Creations. Brooke and Eric lifted their glasses, triumphant in the sense that they had successfully reasserted the authority and prestige of the original Forrester dynasty, while others frantically dealt with the fallout from the sudden runway changeover. Their toast together represented more than simply the triumph of a fashion show. It signaled the start of a new, potentially contentious era in which Brooke not only regained her position as the head of Forrester Creations, but also did so with the patriarch, Eric, at her side. One question, however, lingered in the air like the glitter that still covered the event floor as they clinked their champagne flutes and reveled in the aftermath of the media attention and audience acclaim. Is Brooke finally on the path to achieving her life's ambitions, or is she setting the stage for yet another spectacular collapse? Brooke's desire for attention has always been evident. One thing has remained constant throughout Brooke's life, from her early days navigating the competitive fashion industry with nothing but grit and drive to decades spent alternating between rivalries and romances, the desire to succeed. And with Ridge returning to her circle and the media calling her the face of Forrester once more, it appears that she might be getting closer than ever to regaining the fame that has so frequently escaped her. Not everyone was applauding, though, as she and Eric grinned and shared air kisses in celebration. Behind the scenes, her triumph was accompanied by conflicted silence from Ridge, disappointment from Taylor, and rage from Steffy. Many, including Steffy, saw Eric's choice of Brooke as the surprise showstopper in the couture finale gown, a move he pushed through under the pretense of branding brilliance, as nothing less than sabotage. Steffy had envisioned a forward-thinking, contemporary image for Forrester Creations that embodied the ideals, concerns, and style of her generation. She desired a game-changing event that would finally move Forrester's reputation away from the cliched Brooke and Ridge narrative, not just a fantastic show. However, with Eric's assistance, that story returned with greater vigor than before. What about Brooke? She stepped into it without hesitation. She appeared like the queen recovering her throne from the minute she walked onto the platform wearing the showstopper gown, smiling placidly next to Ridge. Some claim she was just taking advantage of a situation. Others think that in order to make it happen, she secretly manipulated Eric. Though Brooke has never shied away from being strategic, especially when the stakes are high, the truth may lie somewhere in the middle. The chemistry she has with her longtime ally and ex-husband Eric is still one of her most underutilized tools. Despite his past love relationships with Brooke and Donna, Eric has always had a strong sense of loyalty to her. In addition to being family, he views her as someone who knows the industry, the brand, and how to produce an image that makes magazine covers. Eric didn't hesitate when the runway finale started to falter. He turned around. He positioned Brooke in the center. And he's doubling down now, riding the post-show joy wave. His praise has become more well-known. He has already hinted at Brooke gaining more authority in the future, and perhaps even regaining a leadership position, in his interviews, which highlight Brooke's vision and timeless appeal. Needless to say, Brooke is not acting hesitant. She gives the reporters a grin, reassures them that she is only trying to help Forrester in any way she can, and subtly refutes rumors that she is trying to force Steffy to leave. But behind closed doors? She is enjoying every moment. She notices a change in the tides. She is familiar with the sensation of power. Furthermore, she has no intention of letting it elude her once more. Ridge's part in this is just as nuanced. Even though he appeared to be pleasantly thrilled to see Brooke on the runway and their connection is undeniable, his subsequent quiet was striking. Ridge is attempting to mediate the situation between his daughter and the woman he can never completely leave, but he is also getting drawn back into Brooke's orbit. At crucial times, their common past, that protracted, tumultuous love story, always seems to come up again. And now that Eric is gently encouraging them to get back together on a professional and maybe personal level, it's obvious that Brooke might be close to reaching the Holy Grail, a successful reunion with Ridge and a commanding position at Forrester. However, what would happen if those she stepped over decided they had had enough? For starters, Steffy is not taking this lightly. She was incensed and disappointed at the betrayal of having her meticulously planned finale stolen. In addition to doubting her grandfather's intentions, she is re-evaluating her role within the organization. There are rumors that she might step down from her position or perhaps launch her own venture, possibly collaborating with Thomas or trying to completely upend the Forrester family history. Taylor has also been stretched to her breaking point. It felt like history was being repeated in the most agonizing way as Ridge openly embraced Brooke once more, this time with Eric's approval. Taylor has long attempted to portray herself as a grown, mature woman, but she is still a human. And no amount of yoga or therapy can make it go away when you see the lady who has been her rival for decades repositioned as Forrester royalty. However, Brooke doesn't appear to care about all of that, at least not at the moment. She is radiant, self-assured, and possibly even a little arrogant. She feels validated. She was dismissed for years, called a relic of the past, and informed that her days of dominance were over. However, she has reminded everyone, fans, relatives, and enemies alike, that she is still a formidable presence in only one night and one catwalk. But there's a chance that Brooke's road to triumph will become a lonely one. Steffy has drawn a line in the sand by becoming so close to Eric and stomping on her goals. If things go wrong, if Ridge falters, if Steffy retaliates, if Eric's health or concentration falters, Brooke might end up alone once more, supported by a dwindling legacy rather than a solid base. For now, however, the lights are bright and the champagne is flowing. Once considered a thing of the past, Brooke and Eric are now the talk of the town. Additionally, Brooke Logan is once again in the center of the plot as the media continues to talk about the show's popularity. Perhaps the true magic is in owning it, at any cost, rather than just walking the runway. Is Brooke making progress toward her goals? It certainly appears that way for the time being. However, no victory is ever definitive, and no limelight lasts long in Los Angeles, particularly in the realm of the daring and the beautiful.